All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Alrighty, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is part 3 of the 12-part webinar series on the 90-day business sprints, and it's hosted by Chris Schneider, the CEO and President of the Exit Planning Institute, as well as the newly awarded Thought Leader of the Year. A few housekeeping notes before I turn it over to Chris today. First off, my name is Drew English. I'm the Program Coordinator here at EPI. If you have any questions, concerns, anything like that, I'm your guy, so let me know. Also, these webinars are being recorded, and they will be sent out after each session. So look for an email from me later this afternoon with the recording. And with that, again, if you have any questions, let me know. But I'll turn it over to Chris here, and he'll get us going. Chris?
All right, thanks, Drew. Good morning or afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. I'm broadcasting from wintry Cleveland, Ohio today. We've got about 5 to 8 inches on the ground, and for those of you that are on the East Coast, I wish you well. Yes, I hear the storm didn't hit quite as bad, but you're still getting quite a mess over there on the East Coast. So hopefully things will get cleaned up and we can all get back to work. Today we're going to talk about aligning the 3 legs. As kind of just to introduce the subject, I wanted to share a little bit of history with you and some of the things that have recently occurred. This last week we did our first owners forum of the year in the Twin Cities area. The event was very successful. We had about 100, and I think the estimate is about 150 or so business owners in attendance. I want to congratulate the leadership team in the Twin Cities area. There were a lot of participants. The event was backed by not only EPI, but also AM&AA, the Alliance of Mergers and Acquisitions Advisors, and ACG, Association for Corporate Growth. And the leadership team did a great job. The owners got tremendous benefit out of it. And as part of that, we did release the most recent survey of 288 as of the last count of business owners who took the State of Owner Readiness Survey in the Twin Cities area. It's a very interesting report, and you can download that report by visiting the Exit Planning Institute's website, going under the Resources tab, and there you'll find State of Owner Readiness and can download the report. One of the things that was really interesting to me that I talked to them about when I kicked off the session is that 99% of the business owners that took the survey agreed with the following statement: having a transition strategy is important to my future and the future of my business. So clearly the owners that took the survey realized the benefits of a written transition strategy. Yet what we found very interesting and a little disappointing was that when we looked at how many of those owners had written transition strategies and written personal plans, we found that only 9%, I believe the number is, that had written transition strategies, and I think the number was about 6% had written personal plans. And so, and there were a number of other statistics that sort of indicated a couple of things. One is perhaps our actions don't always match our values. So clearly the owners recognize the importance and valued a written transition strategy, but their actions didn't reflect that they were taking action on that and producing a written plan. Even though of the survey, I think it was 80% of the owners were over the age of 50. 3 out of 4 owners, 77%, indicated they want to transition out of their business within the next 10 years, and 53% within the next 5 years. The other thing it kind of highlighted, perhaps, is that owners don't know what they don't know. So if they've never exited before and they haven't gotten any significant education related to how to exit properly, how would they know what to do? So it's probably a combination of sometimes our actions don't always reflect our values, but probably more so is we don't know what we have to do to exit successfully. We don't realize that having a written transition strategy is a key to success, and having a written personal plan is a key to success. So I would highly recommend that you go download the report. You can look through those questions, kind of self-assess, do your own self-assessment, see how well you score. And I would encourage you, I think EPI is going to release the dates shortly, but we will be doing several of these owner forums across the country over the course of the next year. And if we're doing one in your area, I'd highly recommend that you attend it. Next webinar, I'll give you some feedback that we've got from the owners. We're still assembling the surveys, but they get a tremendous amount of benefit from attending these one-day sessions that get them out of the office and let them focus on harvesting their most significant financial asset. So it's kind of an introduction to today. I wanted to sort of step back and, in 2006, after a 20-plus career in creating improvements in the corporate offices, I decided to launch my own practice to help owners of privately held middle market businesses build value and extract that value in a sell-side transaction. Just a couple of years we were off and running and already had a number of financial successes, but we had our fair share of failures too. And one of the things I noticed is that sometimes after months and sometimes years of working to build transferable business value, when the time came to actually transfer the business was like right there in front of us. I call it, you're in the red zone, you're inside the 20-yard line, you're about to take the ball over the goal line. The best word I can describe that I think you'll relate to is owners just started getting squirrely. They got very irrational, not all of them, but a number of them got very nervous about parting with their most significant financial asset. And for many of us, I speak as an owner myself, the loves of our lives. I mean, we love our businesses. At the time though, I just couldn't understand it. I was, talking to my clients, I'm saying, look, we're about ready to score here. We just need to pound it over the goal line. And I just was perplexed about it. I wanted to understand why. I kept asking them, why are you having reservations? And I'd get very irrational answers. And I realized after this happened a few times that I was missing something. My focus had been completely on the business, driving value, and focusing on money and harvesting the owner's assets. And what I realized is that by only focusing on value, I wasn't focusing at all on the owner's emotional or personal affairs after the sale. And I realized I had to change my approach to become more holistic in the way I approached building value for business owners and helping them harvest that wealth. That is when, in 2008, I ran into an email from EPI, and I saw EPI's philosophy of aligning the three legs of the stool, personal, financial, and business, and it just resonated with me. And I realized I had really been only focusing on one leg of the stool, which was the business, and I really needed to focus on all three legs. So today, we're going to focus on aligning the three legs, which is your second action of the 11 actions, or your second sort of what I would call a paradigm shift. Before we jump into that, I just want to remind you, for those of you that have continued to participate, or for those of you that are new, at the end of all of the webinars, we have an action item, because value acceleration is grounded in action. So our last action was I had asked you to consider how well you are integrating the concepts of exit strategy in the way you operate your business every day, to realize that exit planning is now. Every day, what you do in your business every day will affect your exit. And last month, we talked about creating that paradigm shift and realizing that exit strategy is nothing more than good, solid business strategy. It's a strategic business tool that will help you drive value and income into your business today, as well as position you to harvest that. So I hope that you did take some time, because again, the thing that was emphasized in Twin Cities area was, our last session was all around, look, I want you to take, if nothing else, just one takeaway from today and take action on it. We've got to take action. The idea that they understood the transition strategy was important, but they hadn't actually developed a plan is an indication of where they hadn't taken action. So we've got to be action-oriented, and what I would encourage you to do is each month when we go through these things, take one simple action and see if you can get it going over the course of the 90 days. Now, the idea of the 3 legs was created by Peter Chrisman, my good friend and my mentor and the co-founder of the Exit Planning Institute and the author of the Master Plan. And what Pete came up with a definition of exit planning which really resonated with me, and I hope it does with you. A successful exit strategy has 3 legs. Maximizes transferable business value, which clearly I was focused on in the beginning, but it also, you need to make sure that the owner is financially prepared and that there is a plan for what's next. And Pete came up with the analogy of a 3-legged stool. And if one of those legs is missing, the stool won't stand. And if one of those legs isn't equal to the others, it's wobbly at best. And I just think that's just a great analogy that when you're looking at what is exit planning, it's a great way to look at it and say, look, am I really addressing all 3 legs of the stool? As I said, this was created by Peter Chrisman, who's been in the exit planning industry since the year 2000. But before that, he was a very successful investment banker with Geneva Capital. So he's had a lot of experience with this, and he's getting a lot of attention for his, actually he has 2 books out. I think he's publishing another one right now. The one that I'm referring to is called The Master Plan. It's a bestseller in 8 countries, and it's I would highly recommend you read it. You can order it through Exit Planning Institute, or you can order it on Amazon.com. Now, what I'd like to do is focus on the 3rd leg of the stool, which is personal planning. We give a lot of attention to business planning. We give a fair amount of attention to personal financial planning. But the thing that's often missing, for good reason, is personal planning. You know, as owners, we sacrifice a lot of our personal lives for the sake of our business, which tends to occupy large chunks of our time, and we often put off the personal things to the side because we have to focus on our business. But one of the things that strikes me as an owner now for 11 years, in working with dozens of owners over those last 10 or 11 years, is that business is personal. When you're an owner, it's a 24/7 job. There's no separation, you know, between business and personal. The idea of that is, as an owner, is ludicrous to me. It's a very personal experience, and your identity is very closely tied to it, and there's really no separation. You're always thinking about your business. You're getting ideas in the morning. You're up 3 in the morning. You've got ideas. It's constantly on your mind, and there really is no separation between the two. You know, your business is part of your personal life and a big part of your personal life. So I want to focus on that particular leg today. One of the quotes that struck me from Michael Gerber, who I know many of you have probably read E-Myth. If you haven't, I would highly recommend you read the book. You know, Gerber talks about he's got a multiple step business plan development process that he talks about in E-Myth. And one of the interesting things about it is that his first step has nothing to do with the business at all. The first step in developing a strategic business plan is to really ask yourself, what personal purpose is the business serving me? And I took this quote out of his book. I don't believe your business is your life, though it does and can play a significant, important role in your life. But before you can determine what that role will be, you must ask yourself these questions. What do I value most? What kind of life do I want? What do I want my life to look like, to feel like, and who do I wish to be? And I think that brings out the personal nature of being a business owner. Now, I'd like to share, not bore you with my own personal stories, but share some powerful personal stories of owners who I have and friends who I've been associated with over the last 10 years. And I think, their emphasis on balance between personal and business is evident in their successes. And I talk about several of these in my book. I have a good friend who had a very successful business career. He was single during all those years as he dedicated himself to the business and growing the business substantially. He got into his low 40s, and there was something missing on a personal side in his life, and that was marriage and a family. And getting into his low 40s, he was realizing he needed to shift his values if he was going to be a dad. And because he was very successful with his business, he was able to sell the business, harvest the wealth from the business, made a boatload of money, and he was able then to shift his center from business to family. Today he has 2 young children, and he owns another business, but he has better balance in his life, and he's really enjoying being a dad. And he, actually wrote a plan and was inspired to become, a father, and he's created a new life for himself, post-business, post the sale of his business as a dad. I have another client that I've worked with a number of years ago. They were nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Pop Female Band in their category. Now, this was a long time ago, and but their passion for music has never ended. They love music, and some of you may have heard me tell the story. It's sometimes a little weird because when you walk in around their office or you have meetings with them, they'll burst out singing because they still love to sing. When I met with them, I first met them about 5 years ago. They were referred to me by their attorney, who called me and said, look, they want to exit the business. The one sister who really had most of the responsibility of running the business was burned out, not getting burned out. She was burned out, and she felt her only way out was to sell the business. So, we did what any good certified exit planning advisor would do. We started out by doing what we call the triggering event, which is a personal financial business assessment correlated to evaluation to kind of figure out how attractive their business was and how ready they were personally and how ready the business was to go to market. And what we found is they really weren't ready at all. They weren't ready personally, and the business wasn't ready. So we started down the track of putting together plans to get them ready to sell the business. As part of that process, I run a workshop called a personal envisioning workshop, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And in that workshop, we really just focus on the personal side of what they're going to do after they harvest the wealth from the business. And when I asked them, what do you think what are you going to want to do next? One of the sisters talked, and she said, she had this vision in her mind of creating a musical institute where they could, educate kids about the music business, teach music, and not just, teach them about music, but teach them about the music business. See, one of the things that happened to them is they exited the music business probably 30 years prior to this, and within a year they were broke because they realized their manager had been taking advantage of them. And they felt the music business was compromising their values, and being 30 years younger, they really didn't know how to handle it other than to leave it. In the personal envisioning workshop, and after I asked him what do you want to do, one sister, gave this vivid description of what this musical institute would look like. And so I said, well, we know what your personal action is over the next 90 days. You've got to write it down. It was all in her head. Until you write it down and think about, how big is the institute? How's it going to be funded? Who's going to run it? What kind of equipment do you need? Where's it going to be located? Just like a business plan, if you don't write down your personal plan and make it vivid and have some details behind it, it's not likely that that vision will become reality. So they wrote down their plan, and one of my real pleasures is about a year or so ago, I went down to visit them. I arrived in town the night before, and I called her up and I said, hey, I'll come into town. I'll come over to the office around 10 a.m. tomorrow. And she said, oh, no, you can't come at 10 o'clock on Friday. That's our recording time. They, over the next 4 years, post-envisioning workshop, they built this institute, and they built a recording studio. And I'm happy to say last year they actually released a new album. They have found time in their lives to record again and pursue a personal vision as well as their company. Their company value is up about 500%, and their profitability is up about 300%. So they clearly have grown the business and achieved a personal vision as well. And I think it's a very strong, powerful story of the benefits of having a written personal plan. You heard about me talk about Andy Rayburn in the first webinar that we did. Andy sold Flexaloy and made so much money he was able to start his own private equity company. What Andy did with his money after he exited was really interesting. He started investing in things that he loved to do. He didn't invest in another fastener company. What he bought was the Daytona Cubs in Florida, a minor league baseball team. And then he bought a second one in Hagerstown. He bought a musical festival up in Wisconsin. And he created a pretty substantial charity in Northeast Ohio. Andy loved baseball. He was a sports fanatic, and he loved music. And he used the wealth that he was able to create by selling Flexaloy to invest it in things that he really loved to do. And my last story is another good friend who's become a very good friend, started as a client, who has a family business. He's second generation. His daughter and son are in the business now, and they're third generation. And they have an incredible story. And he spoke at our owners forum in Northeast Ohio a couple of years ago. And what he said is that, he has a few health issues, and he was kind of slowing down. And the business was sort of on autopilot, and he admits that. And he thought, well, when the kids come in, they'll sort of take the business, and I can sort of retire. But just the opposite happened. What he says is, when he describes, he says, when my children came in with their enthusiasm and vigor to grow the business, it invigorated him personally. And as such, he didn't have to focus on running that particular business anymore, which his children were now running. And he had time to focus on other things. One of the things he loves is real estate, but the thing he really loves to do is fish. And he was on a boat, his boat in Florida, and the guy walked by and he's asked him, hey, that shirt you're wearing, you love that? You like that shirt? And he says, yeah, I love these shirts. I've got 5 of these. And the guy said, I made that shirt. I created that shirt. Well, my client, my friend, got very excited about that and got together with the guy and put a partnership together and invested in the shirt company. And he's been spending a lot of his time learning about the retail business, learning about overseas manufacturing, importing, going to a number of trade shows. He would have never had the time to do that in his old business if his children hadn't stepped in and if he hadn't turned over control of it to them. And just a month or so ago, he told me they're really making progress, and they've received interest, actually an order from the U.S. Navy, and they've been trying to break into some of the big box retails, and they received an order for 2.5 million shirts. that now they're trying to figure out how to get financing to get all of these shirts made and distributed. Now, I tell you these stories because all of these people had written personal plans, and the other thing that struck me is that they were all independent of their businesses. None of them would have had time to pursue their personal passions if they weren't independent of their business. So the first thing that we really had to do when we worked with them is get them independent, create time for them to go pursue these other passions. And they just wouldn't have had time to do that if they weren't independent of their business. And the other thing that sort of strikes me is, our perception of exit sometimes is that it's the end, and it's not the end. It's just leaving, exiting one door and moving into another door, opening another door. It's really what we call the third act, or what I'd like to think is your best act. Because if you think about it, especially if you're able to harvest the wealth in your business and money isn't your issue, and you can apply and you still have enthusiasm and a lot of creative energy, you can apply that same kind of energy, like my friend who has the fish company did, towards some other endeavor, and you ended up working on something that you really love to do. And I know we love our businesses, but how about a business that is built around a hobby or a passion? For my one friend, his passion was family. For my other friend, it was fishing. For my three sisters, it was music. So exit doesn't have to mean it's the end. Some of us may want to leave. Others will be forced to leave. It's important for you to know that there's a 50% chance that you'll be forced to leave, and your exit will not be on your timeline or terms. Some of us, we may never leave until we're dead. We may just want to slow down or do something different. Something that you want to do, not something you have to do. And some of us may need to harvest the wealth in our present business to fund that third act venture, whatever it is. But the point I want to make is that exit planning isn't about the end. It's about building a model towards moving into your third act. And remember what we talked about last month is redefining the paradigm, right? Redefining that paradigm in our mind that exit planning is really about creating the life that you want in your third act. So to do that, we need to ask ourselves a few questions, right? One is, given your age, what do you want to be doing 10 years from now? You need to think out. I like to think a vision takes 10 years to realize. When I decided I wanted to become an entrepreneur, that was 10 years ago, 11 years ago now. 11 years ago, I was still, working for someone else. But I had a vision in my mind of being an entrepreneur and having investments in multiple companies. And it really took 10 years to realize that. In my book, I give you something I call STEP, an exercise that you can go through to kind of help guide you through figuring that out. But I really encourage you to think out 10 years from now. If you're 55, 10 years you're 65, right? What are you going to be doing? What do you want to do? How's your health? What's the family history like? What's the likelihood of a health issue? If your family has health issues, there's a good chance you're going to have a health issue. Are you doing things like working out and watching what you eat and things like that to keep your health strong? I actually had one of my clients tell me we should change the three-legged stool to a four-legged stool because he said health should be its own leg. Now, we cover health as part of our personal, but he feels like health is such an important ingredient towards success in your third act that maybe it should be a standalone. How's your financial situation? Is your passive income where it needs to be? Is there enough there to fund a third act? I just got filed our extensions for our companies and did our tax estimate and came down to talk to my wife about it and told her how much I owed the government. And she says, wow, how much, why do we have to pay the government so much? And the reason is that, a good chunk of my income is passive income now. I do still collect a salary from a couple of my companies, but a good chunk of my income comes from what I call mail money. It's the checks in the mail. It's passive income that I am either, just, a small portion of a little involvement in the company, maybe a leadership role, but I'm not actively involved in actually operating the company. And, we want to get our passive income to a point where there's enough investments out there and we're making enough money off of those investments, be that the market, be that bonds, be that real estate, be that your business interests, that we don't have to work anymore. So ask yourself, what's your passive income like? If you didn't have your business, would you still have the income stream you need to pursue your life's dreams? Do you need to harvest the wealth in the business to fund your third act? Maybe there's things you can start doing now to fund that, but I could tell you my friend who started a family is able to spend a lot of time with his family right now because he harvested that wealth and he doesn't have to work. He works because he wants to work and he's passionate about things, but he doesn't have to work anymore. Do you still want to be on the line? What if your president quits or has a health issue? So even if we are owner independent of our business, we still rely on our staffs to run the business, right? What if your president quits? What if the president has a health issue? You don't want to be in a situation where you lose a key person and it takes you down. So I think you have to ask yourself, if as long as you're the owner of the business, you're still on the line. Are you still ready to step in if you have to? Are you still ready to be on the line for debt and liability? And the last concept is, can you do partial exits or multiple exits along the way? We tend to view exit as a once in a lifetime. My good friend Sean Hutchinson has been working on a concept of helping owners have multiple exits along the way to kind of de-risk themselves so that 80% of their wealth's not tied in their business and they're able to harvest the wealth. So one of your strategies you should think about is, can you sell a part of the business to your children? Can you sell part of the business to employees or management? Can you do a recap with a private equity company that will allow you to take some chips off the table, start investing in your third act, and still stay engaged with the business? Remember, exit doesn't have to be once in a lifetime. There can be multiple exits along the way. Now, before we start jumping into that, the first thing I'd recommend you do is a personal risk analysis. So as I mentioned before, the 5 Ds are death, disability, divorce, distress, disagreement. And there's a 50% chance that you're going to be impacted by one of those 5 Ds, which means you're going to be forced into your exit. So do the appropriate due diligence and do the appropriate risk analysis to really assess, are you ready if you get hit by one of those, knowing that there's a 50% chance that you will. Do you have the right financial diversification? You can have business interests, but maybe you want to have multiple business interests. It may require you to take a minority position with some of those business ventures, but a lot of owners who successfully exit reinvest a portion of those net proceeds back into businesses. And you can diversify through business interests as well. It's one of the reasons I have interest in 8 different ventures. I wanted to diversify that. And quite honestly, not all of them have been successful. Some of you on the phone may even be familiar with some of the failures that I've had. Having failures is just part of being in business. But if I have a failure here, it's not going to take everything else down. So if you are going to remain invested in business, think about having multiple businesses that you're invested in instead of one business where 80% of your wealth is tied up. And monitor your passive income. See if you can get that passive income up. How much do you need? Doing a needs analysis with your personal financial planner or your wealth manager is a great exercise. If you were to lose the business, how much do you need? How much passive income do you need coming in to support your current lifestyle. Do you know that? Have you analyzed it? Have you projected it out the next 10, 20, 30 years? Most of us will have a 30-plus year third act. It'll be a third of our lives. So it's clearly not the end, even though it might be on the downside of that, but it's clearly not the end. And make sure that you have done some contingency planning. You could write something as simple as a contingency letter, which if you go to my website, SnyderValueIndex.com, I put a sample contingency letter out on my website. You can go to my website and download that sample contingency letter, and you'll see how simple it is. Now, it may take you a few weekends to actually think it out and write it out, but it's a 3 or 4 page letter that you write that just says, look, if something happens to me and I can no longer operate the business, this is what I want you to do. Here's who you should call. This is what I would like to see happen. And it gives those people who you're leaving behind or who may have to step in to help you some instructions on what you want done. And it's not an extensive exercise to do. You just sort of have to think it down and write it down. Make sure that your attorney, your wealth manager, your CPA have copies of it. And of course your insurance professionals. And do some basic estate planning. I mean, maybe you don't have the assets to do a full estate plan, but all of us should be doing at least some basic estate planning, which is going to include your personal financial plans, some trusts, powers of attorney, living wills, things like that. I'll give you a list a little bit later. And make sure that you have the right insurance in place, so if you do get hit by one of these things, you're not going to be, your estate isn't going to be taken down. For me, it really comes down to 3 things: purpose, health and enthusiasm, and money. And I crossed out age there because I don't think age really matters. I think more so than age, it's health and enthusiasm. I've run into owners in their 70s that are still quite active because they're healthy, and they're still very enthusiastic. My friend with the fish company is still very active because he's traveling around and doing all these trade shows, flying around the country, and he's quite active because he's very enthusiastic about fishing. My friend who's become a father is very enthusiastic about being a good dad and spending time with his kids. The sisters that I talked about are very enthusiastic about music, and so they've taken the time to record, a new album. So I really don't think it's about age as much as I think it is about health. You could be older, but if you're still healthy and enthusiastic about something, you could still be very engaged. And then let's face it, we need money. We want to be secure. One of the things that happens with owners is they're trapped in their business because they need the income from the business to support their lifestyle. And if you could build up some assets outside the business where you've got enough passive income coming in and secured, and you've done the right planning, estate planning, and so forth, not having to need money enables us to do a lot of things. As my dad once said, money isn't everything, but it sure helps. So I really think it comes down to making sure in our third act we still have purpose. And so you really got to take your time to develop that. Like I say, it could take you 5 to 10 years to really develop that. Make sure you stay healthy. Find something you're really enthusiastic about and go after it with the same vigor that you built your business. And then make sure that you take care of your money and have the money that you need to pursue life in your third act. Now, one of my favorite authors, Wallace D. Wattles, you guys will hear me quote him a lot. He wrote the book, The Science of Getting Rich. His analogy is to think of this as a new house, right? So think of your third act as a new house. And what you have to do in that paradigm shift that you create is make that paradigm shift vivid, right? That's why I asked the sisters to write down their specifically how the Music Institute would operate, what funding it needed. Make it real. what you want to do is you want to pursue a personal plan the same way you pursue a business plan. And that you're going to do the very same things you do to develop a business strategy, you'll do the same things to develop a personal strategy. But it starts with the vision of a new house. What's it look like? How many bedrooms does it have? How many bathrooms does it have? Does it have a pool? Is it in the woods? What kind of furniture is inside? What's the kitchen look like? You got to make it very, very vivid. So to do that, remember we talked in the last webinar about creating this mental image and then walking the path with purpose to pursue it, and then having the faith that you have achieved it, and that in reality all you need to do is take possession of it. So think of this new house and make it vivid. Think out 10 years. How old will you be? What's your health going to be like? What are you going to be enthusiastic about? What's your day like? Be specific. What time do you get up in the morning? What do you do next? Do you read? Do you work out? Do you go for a walk? And then how do you fill your day? Do you visit one of your businesses? Do you play the market a little bit? Do you go fishing or play golf? Visit the grandkids? Who do you see and talk to during the course of your day? You got to think these things out, make them very real, and imagine in your mind through creative visualization what the day is going to be like after you exit your business. Now, to help my clients actually create this personal vision, I do what I call a personal envisioning workshop. And I teach this in the SEPA program. And a lot of the SEPAs are quite interested in it because a lot of them don't do this kind of work. But it's the very first workshop we do after we complete the personal financial business assessment and the valuation, what we call the triggering event. The very next step is to have a personal envisioning workshop. It takes about 2 or 3 hours to do it. All my workshops are contained within about a 2 or 3 hour window, so I'm not consuming a ton of your time. I personally charge $2,500 to conduct the workshop. I would highly recommend that you get someone to facilitate this for you, because they'll ask you questions and allow you to participate in the process rather than having to kind of keep score. But if you do decide to do this on your own, make sure that you get yourself into a room in a nice environment. You have a flip chart or a whiteboard. Don't sit at a desk in front of a computer and try to type it out. It's not creative enough. You got to get up, you got to be on your feet, and you have to do it like a workshop. And that means flip charts, whiteboards, and you're going to run through a series of questions, and you're going to write these things on your flip chart or on your whiteboard. And again, I'd recommend you bring in a facilitator, but you could do it on your own as well if you think you want to try this on your own without a facilitator. But treat it like a workshop. Once we're done, then we're going to take all those notes and we're going to document it onto, I have a 3 or 4 page template that I actually fill out for my clients and then hand it back to them. And then we have a follow-up meeting and say, hey, does this capture your vision? And again, all this can be done in really a 2 or 3 hour workshop. But also remember that if you're using a facilitator like a SEPA, they're probably going to be spending 2 or 3 times that, because they've got to prepare, they've got to capture the notes, and they've got to help you develop some action plans around that. So I'm going to march through what we do in this workshop so you can kind of see this, and you can try this yourself, or you can ask your SEPA about it. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Well, the first thing we start is with personal themes. So what we'll do is we'll look at the assessment, personal financial business assessment. So in the assessment, we've identified and we've scored some personal value factors. So the first thing we're going to see is there's going to be some themes coming out of that assessment that'll tell you, look, you're weak on personal financial planning, you're weak on insurance planning, you haven't written a personal plan. We're going to identify where all your weak areas are, and that's going to present us with some themes for improvement. Then we're going to look out 10 years and talk about what your long-term wishes are. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? And we're going to try to start creating the vision of this new house. We talk about your age. How old will you be? Your health, your money, your family. What's your family going to be doing? You have a son that's 30 years old, the son's going to be 40 at that point. What involvement will you have in your business 10 years from now? We're going to talk about that. We're going to go through the step process that I talk about in my book, Spiritual Things, Experiences, and People. So spiritually, where does our inspiration come from? It may be religious inspiration, but it might be some other kind of inspiration, like the inspiration for my other clients was being a father, or being in a business, in a fishing business, or recording a new album. You know, that could be where you get your inspiration. What things do you have today, do you want in the future? We're all sort of possession-centered. You know, what kind of things do you want? What kind of house will you live in? Will you live in the same house, or will you live in a new house? Will you stay in the same location, or will you move? If you're from Cleveland, maybe you move south into Florida. Maybe you get a second home. Maybe you want a home on a lake. Maybe you want a boat. It just depends. We all want things, and having wealth allows us to obtain those things, but we also want to explore what things we can live without. Do I need a home with 5 bedrooms and 4.5 baths? You know, I don't know if I still need that 10 years from now. What experiences do you want to have? A lot of us have a bucket list, you know, things we like to do but we haven't had time to do. Well, what experiences would you like to have in 10 years or over those 10 years? And then also look at people. What people are important to you today? I think it's important to look back in your past to make sure you're showing gratitude to the people who have helped you get where you are, but also in the future. Who are you hanging out with? Who are your friends? What charities maybe are you involved with? So forth. You're going to want to examine needs versus wants. Yes, I know you want $40 million, but can you live with $10 million, right? So we want to explore that, needs versus wants. Make sure that we have enough passive income and enough insurance protection and estate planning protection that we are able to at least secure what we need, and that allows us then to pursue what we want. Remember, in the 5 stages of value maturity, you identify, the second step is to protect before you build. What's the composition of your wealth look like? Sean Hutchinson, again, does a marvelous presentation where he shows a chart up on the board, and he shows what he calls the Pac-Man chart. And the Pac-Man is 80% of the owner's wealth tied up in one asset, which is their business, most of the cases. According to most financial planners, 80% of your assets are tied up in your business. And so what does the composition of wealth look like over the next 10 years as you start to de-risk and take some money out of the business while still funding growth? That can be challenging, right? That's why we need a real solid plan for how that composition of wealth will transition over those next 10 or 20 years. What are your health goals? What are you doing to stay healthy? What's your family history like? We talked about that. How about charities? One of the things that really impressed me about the Twin Cities area was that 1/3 of the owners said the number one thing that they would pursue after they exited their business was charitable endeavors. Business owners are very charitable, and it's also a great way to get involved with a charity, to give back and to show gratitude. Is a great way to express your personal values. And then also location and housing, like where are you going to live? Are you going to stay in your home? I know my wife and I are going through that evaluation right now. Should we stay in our home, or should we move to a smaller home? Should we have multiple homes? We're going through that decision-making process right now. Where do you want to locate? And you know, where do you want to live? Once you've kind of done some of that exploring, the next thing you want to do is create a personal mission or brand statement. Now, in my chapter on relentless execution, I give an example of a brand statement, a company brand statement. But what I want you to think of is pursuing your personal plan the same way you'd pursue your business plan. And that means developing a mission and brand statement. What's your personal brand, your core purpose? What principles do you value most? Why do you believe in this brand? What proof do you have? For example, the sisters had already recorded. They had already been in the business. Therefore, it was reasonable for them to want to pursue something to get back in that business. My one friend had been, fishing, a real fisherman for 30 years. So he really knew the fish business. So it was reasonable for him to want to get into a company that sold fishing gear. Why are you passionate about this? What are your centers? Stephen Covey talks about finding your center in the 7 Habits. My one friend moved from being work-centered to becoming family-centered. That was a transition he had made. And what's the tone and manner? What is it like being with you? What's your personality like? What gets you juiced? Are you fun? Are you serious? Are you aspirational? Are you quiet? Try to get in touch with the way others see you, and when people deal with you, what's it like dealing with you? Now again, if you go to Relentless Execution, that chapter, you'll see you'll see a brand statement for a company, an example, and I kind of take you through that questions. Go through that same process from a personal standpoint. It's no different to develop your personal strategy. Next, you're going to want to identify those 4 or 5 personal risks that you need to make sure you take care of. We're going to identify 4 or 5 opportunities to exceed your plan. So maybe we have a targeted selling price, but then we have a premium selling price that will allow us to really exceed our plan. Maybe your investments turn out much more robust in returns than you anticipated. Next, you're going to want to look at 3 to 5 year quantifiable targets. Those targets might be, instead of business targets, you're going to do personal targets, like what's your net worth, what's your income level, what are your needs versus wants, what year do you expect to retire, where are you going to reside. What you're going to want to do is put a description and a goal associated with each of those targets. Identify your personal core team members. Just like you need to have a transition team for your business, you need a personal team that will give you advice. That team will include family, a financial planner, a wealth manager, a life coach perhaps, maybe a mentor. What you're going to want to do is identify each of your mentors or each of your members on that team and what your relationship is to them. And next, you want to develop 3 to 5 capabilities to build over the next 3 to 5 years. So a lot of us want to pursue these things, but we need to develop our skills to be able to pursue them. My friend knew about fishing, but he didn't know about the retail business. His business was a supply chain business. He didn't really know retail. So he had to really develop and invest time in learning about retail. My friends, or Andy Rayburn, loved baseball, but he didn't really know what it was necessary to run a baseball team. As someone who has run a sports franchise, it's not like running another kind of business. It's not like running a manufacturing company or a distribution company or a service company. Sports franchises have a unique model, and you have to learn that model. So you have to develop those capabilities. How are you going to develop those capabilities over time? And they say, I give you a little checklist. What should be on your checklist is, a written contingency plan, yes or no, personal financial plan, a will or trust, powers of attorney, living wills, estate plan, written third act, active advisory board. Simple checklist, and all of those should be yes. So to close, let's revisit our house. The quote that really struck me from Wallace Wattles was, when we create this vivid idea of what our personal third act is going to look like, everything starts to move towards it when it becomes vivid, right? So the quote I really like is, we need to live in the new house mentally until it takes form around you physically. As this impression spreads, all things are set moving towards its realization. And that is so true. If you can create in your personal plan a vivid description, written description of what your third act is going to look like, I almost guarantee you that you will make that happen. But it has to become very vivid, it has to become written, and it has to be backed by action. So your homework for this session is to commit yourself to developing a written personal plan in the next 90 days. I've given you an outline as to how to do that. I've given you a mechanism through a personal envisioning workshop. You can try it on your own. You can always call my office or go onto my website at exitplanninginstitute.com and find a certified exit planning advisor in your area that can help you do this. Or I'm happy to talk to you about this as well. But if you don't bring somebody in, try to do it yourself and take the time. It's 2 or 3 hours of your time. That's all it is, to sort of start to put this plan together. If you accomplish that, it's a much higher probability that you will achieve this vision of your third act. Our next webinar is going to be on April 12th from 1 to 2, and we're going to focus on the next action, which is to focus on the goal, which is identifying, protecting, building, harvesting, and managing value. There's one goal that we need to be focused on, and that's building value into our businesses. With that, I will turn it back over to Drew, and I look forward to seeing all of you next month.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Greatly appreciate that. And everyone, thank you for joining us today. I will be sending out the recording here shortly. And again, if you have any questions, concerns, thoughts, anything like that, please don't hesitate to let me know. And we will see you on April 12th. Have a great rest of the day, everybody.